Guys, welcome to my channel. Last week I released a video about how your pain is not your fault, and this week I wanted to go more into depth about why we make it our fault in the first place, or why we accept that belief. Stay tuned. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're new, please click the little subscribe button and the bell to receive new videos when I release them. And if you've been with me for a while, thank you so much and welcome back. Today I wanted to go deeper into the subject that I was talking about in my last video, which is that your pain is not your fault. It can bring great relief to realize that. And I went into a little bit in the last video about why we make everything our fault. Number one, maybe you had a parent who did. But number two, it negates that powerlessness that brings us such anger, because anger is a cover emotion for powerlessness. This is why a lot of highly sensitive people experience a lot of anger, which sounds strange, but it is true. Because when you're born into a society that doesn't understand you, you're going to feel very powerless. And so because of that, we try to control other aspects of our life. We try to make ourselves the problem and blame ourselves for why certain things are the way that they are. I was talking with a client earlier today about this and his current situation, and it really brought to my attention the fact that so many people, when we grow up into adulthood, we don't realize that those untapped inner child wounds that we bury them because they make us angry. And they make us angry because we still haven't reclaimed the power behind the scenario. And so what I want to explain today is why we oftentimes blame ourselves for things that couldn't remotely be our problem, couldn't remotely be about ourselves. An example is someone who's abusing you. How the heck are you responsible for their behavior, right? But as children, we think, I'll give you an example of an alcoholic mother. Let's say your mother was an alcoholic, and as a child, you couldn't say that she had alcoholism because that would be scary and you wouldn't know what to do with that. So you just said, oh, mommy drinks a lot. But if I'm a better girl or a better boy, maybe she won't. If I give her so much love, maybe she won't need that. And that never works because it's not about you. It's not your fault that your mom has that. So what's interesting about this is we never get to that level of thinking, the reason she isn't healing can't be because of me. It has to be because she needs to choose to go to AA. She needs to choose to heal that disconnect, that wound. We don't do that consciously as children. So what happens is we start to unconsciously feel very powerless to mommy's addiction, and we get very angry, and we turn that anger inwards towards self-hate, self-blame, inner critic, because we refuse to blame mommy for her problem because we don't think that way as children. As children, we think everything's because of me, or I could fix this, or my love should heal this, and if it doesn't, I'm not enough. Really take that in. Because we can parallel that experience with so many scenarios. And then when we move into adulthood and we have relationships and they don't work out, we think, see, again, because of me. And one of the things I was telling my client today with my last video was, it's not your fault that you have this pain. But when we start to really, we can hear that. But when we start to really go into the inner child and look at old scenarios and see how maybe the healing of memories, maybe we were wrong about the idea that it was because of us or that it was our fault, we can then start to see that when we think something is our fault, it's because there's something wrong with us. So you probably, if you're one of these people, you've gone through life making everything that goes wrong or anyone that rejects you because of you, because there's something wrong with you. How often do we feel misunderstood and different and think it's because there's something wrong with us, which it never is the case. So the next step with that is, once you really get to the gnarly reality that it wasn't because of you and it's not your fault, you start to see the truth of who you are, and it can be scary. And people resist this step so hard for so long, because if you don't resist this step, right, if you continue to believe that it's because of you, it's because there's something wrong with you or you did something wrong, then the original story can continue and then your pain would make sense. Think about it. But what I want to teach is when we can change the story, which is actually the last step in my shadow work program. It's very big. We change the story after we do the shadow work or inner child work, right? So when we change the story because we've realized this piece, what happens is we are forced then, just by conscious alignment, we're forced to see who really was at fault. We're forced to see the truth of the other person. And what's interesting is you can start to see how past relationships make sense because now the other person might have a flaw. It's not all you. Maybe the other person had some stuff going on that you didn't agree with, that you felt, but you made it you. You internalized. Especially if you're highly sensitive, you definitely internalized your powerlessness, your anger, your inner critic. And that is what made you make things make sense because there was no other way to get the validation from a world that doesn't understand you, right? So think about that. Once you realize maybe it's not because of me, maybe there's not something wrong with me. We all have wounds, but there's not something wrong with you innately. You can start to see what might not be perfectly right in another. You can start to see the wounds and the traumas in the other people. And when you're young, it's too scary because you need the other people to protect you and facilitate life for you. But really, when you're older, you can start to do that inner child work because it's safe and you know you're capable and you know you can be your own safety. And that is when we give ourselves the permission to see the other people for who they are. I've said this before in videos, but I literally walk around and I feel like everyone I meet is a new part of my tribe because we're all on the same big rock together, right? Planet Earth. And I start to just see people not as better or worse or all I see in people is their wounding and their healing, their consciousness and their unconsciousness. And it becomes this interesting walk through the day of seeing where people are at because I know where I'm at because I've done so much work. When you start doing all the work, you really see yourself more accurately. It's not a trauma where you think I'm all good or all bad and then that person's good or bad. Like we all do that because we want certainty of self and other. But the truth of people is that we're all in the gray area. We all got issues. We all got gifts. We've all got wounds. We've all got, purpose. And so I just want to encourage you guys to take that step today and really rewire that. Look at if I wasn't the blame, it's not my fault, and if there's nothing really wrong with me, which is going to take a lot of us time to get to, right? But when you know, there's nothing wrong with you, and that's not why this happened, and that didn't happen because of you, and you weren't ignored because of you, right? When you really look at what if I apply what Candace is saying and I say, this bad thing happened, but it wasn't because of me. Then you have to look at what was it because of. This will set you free. This is a really big step in this process. So I wanted to share that with you guys today, a little tidbit from Shadow Work course. And I also want to welcome you guys to my Patreon link below, to my Shadow Work course below, to everything else that I offer. The links are below. If you become a Patreon member, you will get worksheets on this video, and you will also be able to ask me a personal question. So keep that in mind. I love you guys. I hope you have a great week. See you soon.